The annotated bibliography is the first very important step in the research process. This is where you're going to identify the sources that you're going to use, but not just identify the sources, but you're also going to explain what the arguments are in the source, what type of evidence the author uses, and whether or not the author proves their point. This will be really important when you go to actually do your final project in determining which sources are actually going to help you and where the information is going to come from. This slide shows you an example of what your annotated bibliography will look like. This particular example comes from the Purdue University Online Writing Lab. You'll notice that you have a basic bibliographic entry for your source, whether it be a book, whether it be a document, whether it be a film, but the basic Chicago-style bibliographic entry will be at the top, and then it's going to be followed by 1 to 2 paragraphs. The example is 1 paragraph, but it'll be followed by 1 to 2 paragraphs where you're explaining all the pieces of that resource. The first thing you need to be very well aware of is that you must use for this particular assignment the Chicago Manual of Style. I have included on this slide a link to the Purdue Online Writing Lab, their guide for Chicago, but I've also shown you in the UConn library where you can find that's the guide for Chicago Manual of Style. Please make sure you're doing it correctly. If you have any questions or concerns, or you want me to just simply look something over, you can show it to me. But again, like I said, you need to use the resources that are at your hands to do it correctly. The final part of the annotated bibliography is the actual annotation. The actual annotation should be 1 to 2 full paragraphs. More than likely it'll be 1 paragraph, but don't do more than 2 paragraphs because then you're getting more into a book review. But again, the annotation should be 1 to 2 full paragraphs in length, and they should explain the following. First, the author's thesis statement or argument. You may also at this point want to give some background information on the author if that's significant. Meaning the author, this is one of many works that the author has written, and maybe give an example of other works on this topic. Maybe the author is an expert in the field and they're an instructor at such and such a university. That type of information will just sort of encourage the validity of your source. You should give a brief summary of the argument, and or what I'm saying is a brief summary of the source. What is the source actually telling you? What is the information you're getting from here? Please don't get too wordy in this. Keep this simple, keep this basic. And then finally, a brief discussion of the evidence. What does the author use? What types of sources does the author use? Is the author using primary sources, secondary sources? Did they interview people? This is where it's important to actually look at the entire source. You need to look at the bibliography. You need to look at the notes. You need to look at everything to help you out with that point. And then you probably want to say whether or not you agree with the author's argument. In addition, you may point out some flaws in the author's argument at this point in time. So you might be saying that, yes, the author proves their point, but they failed to acknowledge A, B, and C. That's just only going to strengthen your own research as you move forward. So again, the final part is the annotation, 1 to 2 paragraphs. It's important to do this correctly and to keep it simple. Chicago Manual of Style for your bibliographic entry, and then your 1 to 2 paragraphs is addressing the stuff that I just talked about. Again, if you have any questions or concerns along the way, please let me know.